Thank you so much for joining me for another tutorial. Today, by request, I'm going to show you how to make a Kaz Brekker inspired Funko Pop. If you haven't watched my tutorials before, I am Ma Cherie. I'm also a teacher, so I do generally look this tired. Thanks for joining me. I love Kaz Brekker. However, this pop is a little more complex to make compared to my Darkling and Nikolai pop. So if you've never customized a pop before, or if you don't do a lot of crafting, I would recommend doing one of those first. To make my Kaz Funko Pop, I used the Percival Graves and the Mycroft Holmes Funkos. Now, the Mycroft Holmes is totally optional. You could just use the Percival Funko because the head and the body, they both work great for Kaz. Like, you could extend the wand and make it into a cane. He's got a great vest and a great coat. I just love the stance of this particular Funko. I think it's very Kaz-like, so I spent an extra $15 in order to get it and use the body for my Kaz Funko. Now, again, you can simply use the Percival. Just paint the Percival the same way that I end up painting the Mycroft body, and you should be fine. Other supplies you will need are white acrylic paint, black acrylic paint, and red paint. Now notice how all of my paints are different brands. The brand doesn't really matter. I would just go with a mid-grade artist paint. Craft paint is very sheer and takes a million coats to complete your project. Of course, you'll need brushes, scissors, and a gold Sharpie. Finally, I used some Primo Sculpey clay to make Kaz's, cane. However, you can use any sort of oven-baked clay. Modeling clay will shrink as it dries, so I never use that. Of course, you can also just cut off the end of a skewer like you would use to make kebabs and paint it black, and that would totally work for a cane too. If you're using two Funkos like I am, the first step will be to heat them up so that we can pop off the heads from the bodies. Heating them up makes them soft. Do not heat up that base that comes with the Mycroft Funko. It will melt. I've accidentally done that before. You want to put the Funkos in the oven for about 10 minutes at 275 degrees Fahrenheit. The pops will be hot, so make sure that you use oven mitts or towels to protect your hands so that you don't burn yourself. Since the pops are now soft from the heat, the head should pop right off, and then you should be able to pop the heads onto the new bodies. Now, while my Funko is still warm and soft, I'm just going to clip off the umbrella because I'm going to replace it with a cane. If you are modifying the Percival body, leave the wand on and just thicken it and extend it by adding clay to the wand. Now I'm just warming up the clay in my hands in order to craft Kaz's cane. Again, you could use a skewer, paint it black. You could use a toothpick, cut off the ends and paint it black. If I was thinking properly while I was doing this, I probably would have covered a toothpick in clay in order to make my cane just a little more sturdy. I'm using the umbrella as reference for how long his cane should be because I don't want it to be too long or too short. So I'm going to paint Kaz's vest red because I think it's a little bit flashier, a little bit more Kaz. And since I'm painting over a darker color, I do need to apply a base coat first. Now I'm going to let that base coat dry, and since I'm going to paint the vest red, I'm going to change his red tie to black just for a little bit more contrast. Totally understand if you want to skip this step. I personally don't like how thin his eyebrows are. I think he looks a little worried, so I'm going to thicken his eyebrows and give them a little bit more arch. Here's a special tip from me. Use the end of an X-Acto knife to scrape off any excess paint, gently of course, in order to clean up your lines. Now I'm going to apply some gold accents to his buttons and the little chain of his pocket watch, and I will probably do his the handle of his cane too. A lot of people will probably disagree with me on this, but I'm actually not going to paint his hair. I think it's totally plausible that Kaz, with all the horrors he's been through, would have some gray hairs. I've known teenagers who had gray hairs just for genetic reasons, so I'm going to leave it the way it is. And the less you paint the head of a pop, the more professional it'll end up looking. So I'm going to leave it alone. Okay, so my original plan was to hot glue the cane on, and of course the hot glue would show, but I would cover it up in gold Sharpie because gold Sharpie is magic. However, I was out of glue, so I just tacked on a little more clay, and then I baked the cane longer so that the clay pieces would bond together. Now you have your very own Kaz Brekker inspired Funko Pop. Thank you again for joining me. If you have any questions about the tutorial, please do leave those in the comment section. And if you have any suggestions, I would love to hear from you. Also, if you found this tutorial interesting or useful, please do like, subscribe, or share.